1930 and 50 something when you graduated high school. You haven't talked about yet. Tell us about your early childhood. When you were the firstborn here of Italian immigrants.
Well, I was not. The firstborn was my brother.
That's right, Anthony was first.
Anthony. I met you were Irish twins. Yeah, he was 1930. He was born December 30th. I December 8th. 10 months, 8 days apart.
Yep.
Anyway, well, my father at the time, he was an immigrant. He came over because there wasn't any work in Italy. And they came from the southern part of Italy, the Toe, Calabria. And the Toe was, you know, the reputation in the U.S. that the South has? Well, that was Italy. The Northerners looked upon the Southerners, you know, and but my father, they did not have any work. So my father and 3 boys, 3 brothers, came to the U.S. as laborers. Work was available. So, but my father said that's not what he wanted to do, and so he started to work. He worked as a laborer, but he also worked part-time in a shoe shop where they were making and repairing shoes. Finally, one thing led to another. He became very a Jew lawyer took my father under his wing and directed him how he could buy a business. And he finally, we saved all his money, he bought a business, went into hock, and he bought a thriving shoe business in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And that's where I went to school at Rutgers.
Okay.
And so all summers, even on weekends, we used to go to the shop and work. But at the time, I was still a teenager. I was shining shoes. But there was a military base there, Camp Kilmer. And a lot of there were men coming from overseas, coming into town, and they were hot to trot. They wanted to hit the town, meet some girls or whatever else. Finally, they used to come to the shop, shine shoes. At that time, shoe shine was 10 cents. A nickel went to the register, a nickel the shoe shine boy came. But these military men, as I say, they wanted to hit the town, so they, on a Saturday, I used to go home with like $25, $30. That was big money then.
Yeah.
That was big money. And we used to turn it over to my mother, and we used to get $5. Well, I felt I was contributing to the family.
Yeah.
And finally, we got older. I began to repair shoes, working on these big machines. I felt I was doing the man's work, and I was. And finally, well, that's where my brother also, Anthony, my younger brother Joe, he wanted to run the business, but he wasn't into repair work. He wanted to be an administrator.
Oh, sure. I want to be in charge. Okay.
But anyway, so in my 10 years, I was in New Brunswick working in my father's shop and going to school part-time. I did not go directly to college. Things were tight financially, but my older sister, she was a big, she was born in Italy. She came to the U.S. when she was 8 years old. She was, my sister, she was very bright. She graduated number one in her high school, had a year off because Papa says no, girls are love. But anyway, but she's the one who said, you boys are going to, she was my senior, she was 11 years my senior. She wasn't not only a big sister, she said, she says, you boys, you were my first family. Now, she has 2 children, both have their doctorates.
Oh, wow.
You know, one is a professor at Massachusetts College. The other is in business, having a half dozen people under her.
Really? These are your nephew and niece we're
Pardon?
talking about. Your nephew and niece?
Chris, he's a professor.
Okay.
He has his doctorate. Lynn, she runs a business, her own business. She has her doctorate. They both have their PhDs. And, but she's the one who said, you boys are going to, she was 11 years my senior. If I was a teenager, she was in her 20s.
Yeah.
So she said, you boys are going to college. And we used to give her a hard time. She said, she said to me once, don't you sass me. She said, I wipe your rear end. She said, and I'll let everybody know what I did. She said, I said, you won't do that. She said, yeah. She had the same bullheadedness as my father. She was tough, but she gave me good direction. And
now, where was she born?
pardon?
Was she born here in New Jersey?
No,
She was
in
born in
Italy.
Italy. So your dad came here by himself.
Pardon?
Your dad came here by himself initially, right? When he first came over. Your father, when he came to New Jersey, he came by himself.
He came by himself.
Right. And so then he had to go back to get
Finally,
your sister and your mother.
my mother, when she was a midwife, she was earning enough. So 8 years after my father moved, she was able to afford transportation for her and her daughter, Lydia. People say, where did that name come from? Well, my mother was a reader, and she says, where did Hugo come from? And, Anthony, of course, I had another brother, Hugo, Ugo, and he was born, I have it down somewhere, like 2 years before Anthony was born. And so, however, when my mother was pregnant with me, Hugo, we don't have the story straight, either diphtheria or Newfoundland, he died. And my mother wanted to carry the name, Hugo, and so that's where I get.
So he died at 1 or 2 years old?
Pardon?
Was he 1 year old or 2 years old? Was he that old?
I think 1.5 years old.
1.5?
Yes, he died. And so, yeah. And as I say, so my mother was pregnant with me when he died, so she wanted to carry the name. And
wow, so she had a baby also when he died, because Anthony
Right.
was, yeah.
right, Anthony.
So, yeah, it would have been like, if he hadn't died, he would have had 3 in 2 years or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, nonstop. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So,
Okay. Your sister's Lydia, right?
Lydia.
She's
My,
still
my
alive?
mother was a reader.
Is Lydia still alive?
Pardon?
Is Lydia still alive?
No, she died. She had, when she was 85, she had a brain tumor, and she was bedridden 5 years. I used to speak to her on the phone. It was very, very difficult. She was a teacher. She was very active. She was very bright. She said, "You don't know how difficult it is to sit in a room and watch this trash on TV." Says, "There's nothing stimulating." So she did a lot of reading for 5 years. But her daughter, Lynn, who has a doctorate, took her in her home, took care of her for 5 years, and it was tough speaking to her on the phone. I used to hang up and I used to cry
Oh.
because it was. She says, "There's nothing to stimulate yourself on it." She says, "There's nothing in TV." She used to do a lot of reading. Used to get videos. Before she got her brain tumor, she was very active in book reading and teachers associations. But 85, things didn't go down. It was a tough period. But her daughter, who has a doctorate, is she was just up here. A couple weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah, we went. Her daughter.
Yeah.
And we went to. She was past. Her daughter used to go to Canada. They have a lot of theater programs.
Oh, in Toronto.
Right.
So her daughter must be almost 70.
Oh, more than that.
Really? Okay.
Oh yeah. And she, on the way back, she wanted to stop and see me and the others, and
Wow.
it was so good to see her. Yeah.
So, your siblings, Lydia, Anthony, both gone. So it's just you now.
Right. And now I have a brother in Florida he's retired, not doing anything, but he also has a great daughter whose family, well, my brother Joe in Florida,
Joe, okay.
his wife died. And so his daughter, Joe's daughter, is taking care of her. And I speak to him once a week. And,
Okay.
And he, I said, what do you, he's not, he's kind of a semi-invalid. I said, get off your rear end. I said, and they have a pool. Get in the pool and do some leg exercises. They said, what do I do? I don't know if,
I saw it.
you see the my exercise bike that my daughter
Yeah.
I'm on that almost every day
That's fantastic.
for 20 minutes. They said, how do you do it? I says, I have to condition. I look upon it as medicine.
It is.
I've got to take it.
Yep.
And they said, how do you do it? I says, I have to condition it. I said, it's easy to get up in bed. I said, do I really want to do that today? I said, I better do it today.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm on it about 5-6 times a week. I do for 20-25 minutes, and I want the blood to circulate. You know.
It's supposed to.
Yeah, I said inactivity is deadly. I told Joe, get to that pool, move those legs, You don't have to swim, but move those legs. There are water exercises you could do.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I sound like a broken record. He says, all right, brother, okay.
So
okay."
he's how much younger is he than you?
A year and 3 months.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Wow.
So very
Just keep going.
well, Maria. Well, my father, he was away from home. Well, for 8 years. When he came to the U.S., I guess he got busy, and then the first Anthony came, then Anthony, then me, then Joe, then my sister Mary.
Mhm.
I'm 5 years older than my sister Mary.
Okay. I'll write this down. I'm curious. All right. Now, let's see. What about your mother? You haven't talked about your mother at all.
Oh, well, my mother, a typical Italian immigrant. My mother was a midwife. A lot of the paisanos, you've heard that term? Paisano is, a paisano literally is a person from the same town that you, Paisan in Italy is a village. Paisano is a person who comes from the same village. And in Italy, a paisano means a lot more than one come from the same. It's almost almost it's understood like a very, very close friend.
Okay.
Very, they're like, the Italians come, they all stick together. But my mother was one of the few, she had her degree, one of the few literate ones who came. As a result of which, all the other paisanos used to come to our house, I remember, with a letter from Italy, and they used to say, legge, read. They were almost completely illiterate. Used to read, my mother used to read, explain, she said, now scriva, now write back. And so we had this in our family very frequently. All the paisani used to come with a letter from Italy. They could not read, when they used to read and write back. And, but, so she was a very helpful immigrant. As I say, she was one of the few literate ones.
Mhm.
So,
And you can speak English and Italian.
yes, she was also a reader. She used to pick up the Reader's Digest and used to read. And my father used to say, sempre reader, you're always reading. My mother, I guess that's where I get from. I do my reading all the time. I don't know what I would do without it.
Mm-hmm.
But so that was my mother's life, and she one of the things she did do when my father got the shop. We lived in Jersey City. New Brunswick was about half-hour drive away. My father, once he got his shop, used to drive back and forth, and that's when we began to go to the shop and learn the business, and but finally, my father bought a house in New Brunswick where the shop was, and that's where we moved to New Brunswick, and that's where I went to school.
Okay.
So, but what my mother's is, she was a typical Italian housewife. All she did was cook, take care of her children, that was her life.
Did she keep working as a midwife?
Pardon?
Did she still work as a midwife?
No,
No.
she tried. they wanted her to go back, take some courses here, and my father says, no, he wanted his wife to stay at home. That was typical male.
Mhm.
I support the family.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. But my mother's life was being a mother, and one of the things she did do was every month her children were within driving distance. Every month she wanted her family to go to New Brunswick as a family, and so every once in a while, every month used to go there and be a family. And I remember my mother had this big pot of tomato sauce, bacon spaghetti, and we used to go with a slice of bread, and she couldn't keep up with us. It was almost like pizza, putting this tomato sauce on a slice of bread.
You guys will never experience this. This will never be something you see in an Italian kitchen with fresh made tomato sauce on the stove and fresh made bread.
Sad.
That was typical. We used to go slice of bread, and she says, "Ancora." She says, "Again." but she loved it though.
Sure.
She enjoyed it.
Sure. They're providing in their own way. They're providing. They're showing their love.
Oh yeah. So.
Gran used to do the same thing.
But that's what she did. That was her life. That was her life. Her life was being a mother, but also she benefited a lot of the immigrants, because she was one of the, to my knowledge, in our circle of friends, she was the only literate one, and she had books in English and in Italian, and so she loved to read. I think that's where I get it from, and
Sure.
That was her life. I mean,
Now, at some point, you and your brother Anthony started working in construction. I know you've told stories about
right,
tarring roofs
right.
and putting in carpentry doors and railings and things. When did you leave the cobbler shop and start working on that sort of thing with your brother? And was it just the two of
Well,
you?
My brother Anthony, he was also a reader. He read
Nathaniel, that's probably our lunch.
Oh.
Could you help me grab it while I'm sitting here? Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Lunch is arriving, but keep talking.
oh
We'll pause it when we get it inside. Or should we stop now?
my brother he got a couple books on electricity, and he learned how to wire homes. I mean, it wasn't, he was, put it on the table,
Yeah.
he was more than just handy. He knew the wire in a home. People hook up a wire, they're completely ignorant how much current that's going to take, and you can hook up anything to it,
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so he became skilled, and he had he was also teaching industrial arts, but he was making more money doing home repairs, electrical, plumbing, or whatever, and I used to work part-time for him.
So you worked for your brother. He was your boss?
Pardon?
Your brother was your boss
Yeah,
then?
he was.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah. But my younger brother, Joe, a little over a year and 3 months, I enjoyed the physical activity, and then when I took a couple of well, physics in high school, you learn some circuitry,
Mhm.
and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the physical activity. It made sense to me. Like I could wire a home. I'm not good on machinery, but the current and exactly the size of your circuit breaker and stuff like that. That made sense to me, but I did not go beyond that.
So did your brother Anthony work in the shoe shop also?
Growing up until
Yeah.
finally, as a matter of fact, he finally opened up his shoe shop.
Your brother did?
Yes,
Oh,
Anthony.
I didn't know that.
He opened up a shoe shop, but he said that's not for him. And also, it was beginning to be a dying trade because, especially women, did not want their shoes repaired. They want new shoes. New shoes. And so he said they used to make his money repairing men's shoes. Lawyers and people who had money. But women, he says, no. What they wanted was, he used to come in, have the shoe dyed the same color as the gown. And so, but he said no. Finally, he was teaching, doing repair work, but he finally left teaching and did nothing but, and his son lives up here.
Also Anthony. Yeah.
Anthony, and his son had a thriving home repair. In fact, he was building homes, multi-million-dollar homes. I mean,
Building them like a contractor?
oh yeah, he was the contractor,
Okay.
and he had a crew working for him. So
So that's your nephew.
my nephew,
Anthony.
right? Anthony's son. Anthony had 3 children. One was Anthony. One was Janet. Janet is she's a retired teacher. And Angela. And Angela is retired, but she was working some outfit and doing okay, doing fine.
Grandpa, I wore out your pen. Oh, it's coming back. There we go. Anthony. I wore out your pen for a minute, but it came back. Angela
And Janet.
and Janet. All still alive now, right?
Sorry?
All still alive now.
Oh yes.
All 3 of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Janet is. Anthony's up here doing. Oh, he's retired.
Oh, they retired. Yeah.
Oh, he was in demand because they liked his work. As a matter of fact, he said he worked for a lawyer, husband and wife. The husband was a lawyer. The wife was a doctor. They had a multi-million-dollar home that he built for them. He says the big headache was the wife. They wanted this and wanted, but she wanted changes going along. But every time you make a change,
It changes everything.
yeah. But anyway, yeah.
All right.
So anyway.
Well, let's pause. And let's get some lunch.